something. My mind turned to the small ships to Red Island. Could I have found them this easily? Rio seemed to be a lucky charm. Hang on, where is this bulbous bow thingy? I giggled. Sounds funny to say. A touch of airheadness to soften my inquisitiveness. The front of the ship is like a wedge, see? Gaming Guy placed his phone on the table and then formed a triangular edge with his fingers. To cut through the waves. Yep, and that's called the bow, I said. And the rear end of the ship is called the aft, Rio said, exaggeratedly tapping his temple. I know some boat terminologies too. In a regular bow, said Gaming Guy, the top is the farthest point. I nodded. Where Joseph and Beatrice stood in the Titanic movie. Gaming Guy laughed. That's right. From the topmost tip, it's a straight edge going down, with the bottom part recessed. How do I explain this? It's a diagonal line going inward to the bottom. I'm doing a bad job at this. I sort of get it, I said. In some cases, he said, the bottom part of the bow extends outwards in a bulb or a sort of protrusion. Think of it like the dick of the ship, Rio interjected. Laughter. Sarah slapped his shoulder. Very predictable joke. Hey, it does look a dick, doesn't it? Don't be childish, I told him. You're always so immature. Rio's eyes, the window to the soul, told me that he got the assignment. Make light of the situation while I pursued my line of questioning. These people wouldn't take us seriously and be suspicious, in contrast to if we played this straight. We make a good team. Gaming Guy continued his explanation about the bulbous bow. Something to do with changing how the water flows around the ship, adding speed to large ships. He might be a ship mechanic. At least someone knowledgeable enough about it. He explained that the bulbous bow of this ship was of a design he hadn't encountered elsewhere, disproportionately way larger than normal, both in length and height above the waterline. That's what she said, Rio chimed in, chuckling. I'm going to start calling my dick the bulbous bow. Everyone laughed again, except me. I noticed Sarah leaning against him. At least the bulbous bow of this cruise ship is useful, I huffed with a disapproving glare. Compared to you. Would be even more useful if it stored a large tender ship so we could just hop in, and it'll open, and we'll be on our way to Catalina. I hate boarding tender ships while they're swaying. It's possible with enough money, Gaming Guy said. But an unnecessary expense. At that point, just install a helipad on the cruise ship. But that takes up a lot of space on the upper deck, which could be another pool. Can't get enough of pools, Rio said. By the way, I heard Bianca is here. Bianca Ceresa? She's shooting a show on this ship, isn't she? Is he seriously trying to find her? When Dario told us we'd investigate Bianca for a possible connection to the 2MS, the first mission for Dean and me, Rio outed himself as a huge fan. He followed her shows on TV and knew random tidbits about her. I could con her. But what would even be a believable ritual to make her do? Steal candies from babies? Tell her if she collects 100 candies, she'd mutate. Yeah, she's here. Sarah's smiling face abruptly turned into a scowl. Guess Bianca didn't have a good reputation with her family's employees. But we don't know where. Only specific people attend to her, and they keep their mouths shut. Snobby pricks, Bottle Guy 1 said. Think they're higher than us because they serve the princess. Bottle Guy 2 tipped a bottle to his friend. You know that does make them higher than us. If you're planning to get Bianca's autograph, the best chance is at Catalina, Sarah told Rio. It might be next to impossible to find her on the ship unless she's shooting in the open, as she did by the main pool yesterday. But when down at the island, just follow the crowd. She'll probably do a meet and greet thing there. If on this ship, she only has a few fans. Got you, babe, Rio said, winking at her. With the topics trickling to a halt, we made our exit. Rio was impeccable in his timing for social interactions, making me a tad envious of his skill. It was like being envious of another person if a dog preferred them to you. There was a difference in how we dealt with people. Rio was a people person. I was a not people person, but very good at pretending to be one. This piqued my curiosity about what illusion would Domino generate for him. Such a fun power Domino has, it became more and more apparent as situations like these presented themselves. Spooky Errand played a prank on me by presenting such an enjoyable ability but placing it behind an idiot, ship-jumping, crybaby gatekeeper. Are you going to look for Bianca? I asked Rio as we walked down the corridor. Oh, that? I just asked about it for a clean exit. The last thing on their minds about us won't be your questions about hidden ships. It also would have been awkward if we left right after the bulbous bow thing. Makes it seem like we were after that. I blinked. Wow, he's more reliable than Dean. I should pretend to be clueless about how intelligent he was. But you're a fan of hers, right? Bianca? You don't want to meet her. After knowing she's trying to become an Adumbri, or maybe she's already one now, still yes. Rio snickered. A hot Adumbri's still a hot hang-on, no. I'm not sure where I was going with that. You can try to get her autograph, I said. It's not like her handwriting will change if she really becomes an Adumbri. Also, a picture. If she ever becomes a monster, you'll have a remembrance, I added with a chuckle. Want to go looking for her? Probs later, when you're not around. Worried I'll ruin your style? You'll never ruin my style. Rio pointed a finger at me, his face suddenly turning stern. And did you forget Bianca knows who you are? Oh, right, of course, I didn't forget that, but I was checking if he did. It's suicide if I try to see Bianca with you beside me. Actually, even without you, I'd rather not dare be in her line of sight. Or her bodyguards. Especially them. Shouldn't you be fine without me? I said, continuing to play clueless. Too dangerous, man. People have seen you and me together. We're together now. I shouldn't risk going near Bianca ever. No autograph for me, or a handshake, or a hug ever. That's it for my life as her fan. Thanks for that, Errand. Really sorry. There was the mission and Dario told us to. Just yanking your chain. You were very brave doing that mission despite being a normal human. I mean it. But I don't know why Dario brought you along for this mission, though, no offense. This is much too dangerous for you. That doesn't make it okay, he said, his face strangely somber. Both of you shouldn't be here. I have this, he placed his hand on his chest, and even I think I shouldn't be here. You're so reckless too, like tailing the McHunters. I didn't spy on them. A coincidence, I saw Rafaela McHunter, that's all. She was in the elevator with me one time. I didn't know it was her at first. Only when she got off her floor and met with Yara McHunter, who's quite recognizable. Probably hotter than Bianca, muttered Rio. Did I realize who she was? Rafaela seemed nice, unlike her daughter. I didn't even suspect she was a McHunter. Not a surprise they'd be here. More confirmation that we were right to investigate this ship. I said we instead of I. Hopefully, Rio forgot it was my idea to come here. Too bad for hoping we were wrong. You make it sound great. We're sure there are Adumbri on board. Personally, I think you should stay behind at Catalina tomorrow. Buy a plane ticket back to La Esperanza and forget about all of this. I'm not doing that. I snapped with conviction that could make Dean proud. You're still human. Just continue your life. I already said I'm staying. Suit yourself, said Rio with a sigh. Anyway, we should continue this thread of investigation, I said, wondering if he truly cared about my well-being or was just being bitter about giving up his humanity. Good call visiting the crew bar. We learned a lot from them. I learned a lot. We have a candidate for the hiding spot of the ships to Red Island. If we couldn't find it, tailing the McHunters was our next bet since they'd certainly head there when it was time for their trip. That was Yara and his brother visiting Big Marcy's office when I was in Domino's Jeffrey illusion. What else could they be talking about other than becoming a Dumbry? A new problem dawned on me just now. What was the departure time to Red Island? I just knew it was the last night of the cruise, but not the exact time. I couldn't wait for hours at the bulbous bow. That phrase sounds nasty because that'd be boring and risky. But I had a clue. Same as when tender ships would pick up the passengers to go to Catalina, the cruise ship had to drop its anchor when disgorging its baby ships or risk ramming or sinking them with its wake. It'd take place late at night or way early morning when most of the passengers were asleep to minimize getting noticed. Though the crew would most likely know about it. Probably not a fast process. I doubted the rich people would be quick boarding and so on. And given the cranes on the ships, I expected there was cargo too, some of them of a monstrous nature. I could have asked those guys if I only thought of this 5 minutes ago. The more I thought about it, the more questions cropped up. Like, why did the cruise ship bring its own transport to Red Island, instead of ships coming to fetch the two MS clients? I guess they wanted to lessen the trips. And was the cruise ship going to wait for the return of the monsterified passengers? Probably not, because that'd be too long. Yeah, we did learn a lot, Rio replied. Where to next? I asked. It'd be awkward if we returned to the crew bar to ask more questions. Maybe there were other of Rio's newfound friends we could interrogate so our intentions wouldn't be obvious. Employees talk. Rio didn't answer me. Instead of returning to the elevators in the middle part of the ship, he headed forward. Rio? Where are we going? To the front of the ship, he finally replied. Oh, we'll investigate the bulbous bow. I said. Shouldn't we be going down? There's another set of elevators up ahead if you want to go down. As for me, I'm going up. Wait a minute. I hurried walking so I'd be beside him. You're not coming with me. He placed his hands behind his head and took a deep breath. That was enough for a day's work, don't you think? He asked, still facing forward. You said it yourself. We learned a lot. You're just going to stop. Was this piece of shit serious? That was you comparing it to a dick. You can't just bail on me. I can. And I will. What are you going to do then? I'm going to the bow of the ship, he said. The crew pool is supposedly there. Just a small pool away from the passengers. Sarah without an H told me about it yesterday. Wish me luck, I'd find some chicks there. You can't do that. I was only partly faking annoyance. Which meant I wasn't. My pawn was abandoning me. Rio was asking to get thrown overboard. He'd get his wish of swimming to shore. I'm going to enjoy my last days because I might not survive until the end of this cruise. He stopped walking and looked at me. As for you, go back to your room and watch TV or something. Don't show your face around here as much as possible. The two MS know who you are. I don't understand Dario's decision to bring you along. He shrugged and went ahead. But I'm not the leader. Such a peculiar person, this guy. Hard to pin down his true personality. Did he agree to go with me, intending to make me avoid danger? Or was he using me as an excuse to not do anything dangerous, and all his yapping was a cover by making him sound concerned about me? Before I could think about how to convince him to continue our assignment, my phone vibrated. This is going to be Dean, I thought before checking. It was. My fingers flew over the screen as I typed a reply while stomping after Rio. He was approaching the elevators. There was a family, husband and wife and two screaming kids who should probably be at a different type of cruise than this, waiting for a carriage to arrive. How did they even reach down here? A ding and a set of doors opened. I was prepared to lunge and grab Rio, but he didn't go in. The dad gestured if we were going to come. We'll take the next one, Rio said. After the doors closed, he told me, I hate loud kids. Be serious here, I said. Are you just giving up? Giving up what? I'm not giving up anything. I'm taking a break after a job well done. Another ding. Here's my ride. Or is it going to be ladies first? I am going with you. I could see for myself what the bulbous bow looked like from above. And if my luck continued, there'd be employees to interrogate. Then I'd try to convince Rio to go to the bottom levels of the ship. Good for you to pick life, he said. His hand hovered on the elevator buttons panel. That's weird. What's weird? Did you forget the floor we should go to? There's a button for 0. I leaned left. True enough, there was a number 0. But there shouldn't be because this wasn't a numpad. What was floor 0 supposed to be? Should I press it? Rio grinned at me. Maybe it'll lead to a secret floor. Secret floor. What numbers did Jeffrey's friend press to make the elevator go to Big Marcy's secret floor? 4, 4, 2, and 8 or 9. Only one elevator could reach it. What if this one led to the secret ship storage? Rio pressed the number 0 several times. The doors didn't close, and the carriage didn't move. He laughed. Nope, nothing. Quit messing around. What floor to reach the bow so you can finally reenact the Titanic? 4 or something. I nudged him aside, partially blocked the view of the panel with my body, and pressed 4 twice. Or maybe 3. I pressed 3 and quickly pressed 0, hoping he didn't see it. Whoa, errand. Don't press random numbers. You'll make this thing stop at each floor. He pushed my hand away and chose the floor where he wanted to go. But the doors were already closing. 4430. Was this the answer to the riddle? Well, it wasn't a riddle. Just a message that I didn't understand. If this was truly the way to the 3 small ships, then Big Marcy probably assumed I was some genius who worked out the secret of the elevators as I infiltrated his hideout on my own. The numbers, Rio nodded at the display on top of the door. There's nothing, shouldn't it count up? Maybe it's broken. He placed his hands on the door. We're moving down, not up. Quite fast. He looked over his shoulder at me. Did you break something? Why are you looking at me? I said. You're the one who kept pressing 0. Maybe we're going to a secret floor. Don't joke about something like that, Rio snapped. You said it first, I retorted. Now, your joke is becoming real. From his voice, I could tell he was anxious. A freaking baby for panicking so fast. I should either be supportive or start to freeze into a frightened statue. But first, I want to get back at him for trying to back out from being my pawn. You kept pressing 0, I said, forcing my voice to crack to match his panic. A blame game was perfect to stoke anxious flames. You shouldn't have done that. It's so obvious there's something wrong with it. We're on a ship with a Dumbry. Like, there shouldn't be a number 0 on that panel, and you pressed it. Shut up, errand, he murmured through gritted teeth. I'm trying to think here. Rude much? I could make Rio's wish of swimming in the ocean come true. Too bad I couldn't off him because that'd make Dario suspicious. Plus, I needed Rio to find the ships to Red Island. He was my lucky charm now, I decided. Rio's face reflected on the elevator door looked like he had heartburn and constipation at the same time. That made me realize he could see my reflection too. I put on a scared powerless human girl face, complete with a hand covering my mouth. Nibbling my fingernails with chattering teeth might be too much. I guess Rio couldn't use his actual powers in a face-to-face fight. But he still had super strength and regeneration for generic brawling. Rio's opened palms on the door clenched into fists. For a second, I thought he was going to punch his way out. That'd put an end to our mission and draw attention to us. Thankfully, he didn't do anything stupid to stop the elevator. No panicking, I repeated in a squeak. We're still going down. This isn't alright, damn it. We're going somewhere we shouldn't be. Duh, our mission is to find suspicious shit, I quipped in my head. We needed to go places we shouldn't be. So like we should be going there. I couldn't tell him that, of course. So, I just retreated a few steps, looking up at the ceiling as if we were falling to hell. It might have been better if I had gone with Everett. At the least, I had some inkling about what went on inside his head. This is an elevator, Rio said, his eyes sparkling as if he had a major epiphany. Okay. What comes down must come up. I think that's the reverse of the saying, I said, wondering if Rio had gone cuckoo. It should be. Rio flapped his hand at me. Yeah. What I'm saying is that we'll just stay inside here. We can't stop the elevator from going down. But after that, we'll just ride it back up. Get it? People use this thing, so it should have a way of going up. The buttons will probably work again. I hope they will. We'll stay put and wait, I said, though I was thinking of how to get Rio out without actually pushing him. I didn't want us to stay inside, we should explore whichever floor the elevator opened to. After a few seconds of silence and staring at each other, we felt the elevator slowing down. Stay behind me. Rio held out his hand. Are you going to fight? I asked. Surprising how he was still protective of me. And such a whiplash of reactions from him. Can't we just pretend we're like lost or something? That's not going to work, Erend. Why not? Let me talk to. If we're lucky, we'll meet no one, said Rio, not listening to me. But if we're not? The elevator dinged open. Rio tensed, hiding a fist behind his back. I craned my neck to see where we were. A tall man with a perplexed look stood outside. He wore overalls with the logo of the cruise ship on his chest. Who are you two? Said Overalls Man. He reached for something in his pocket. We pressed the wrong, I started to say. But Overalls Man didn't get to hear my excuse because Rio punched him in the chin. Rio stepped out of the elevator, catching Overalls Man as he slumped. We're as unlucky as my mother giving birth to me, Rio grumbled. Why did you do that? I demanded. Rio wanted to stay out of trouble, yet he pulled some dumb shit like this. Rio looked left and right. Presumably, everything was clear outside. He waved at me. Get out of there. Follow me. And he dragged the unconscious man away. I wanted to go exploring, so I supposed this was fine. I quickly glanced at the security camera of the elevator. It was pointed inward so it didn't capture Overalls Man getting whomped before stepping out. We hurried down a corridor, its metal walls painted gray. The way was well lit and clean, with pipes and valves here and there. There were also signs, numbers, and arrows, and technical-sounding words. I didn't know what they meant. I failed to match my surroundings with the pictures Big Marcy sent me, but I'd surely come upon somewhere familiar eventually. Why did you do that? I repeated my question to Rio in hushed tones. Why did you attack him? Look for doors, cabinets, anywhere we can hide this guy. Is he dead? I stammered. Just going to keep up being timid and nice, Erend, until I make sense of this crazy bastard. Your super strength. I didn't kill him, said Rio, finally answering me. He scanned the ceiling, probably checking for security cameras. He's breathing. There's some humanity left in me. Humanity? What are you talking about? Didn't use much force behind my punch. Rio briefly replied. I should've. He stopped by the corner, Overalls Man draped over his shoulder. I crouched beside them. My first strike should have been full-forced, Rio continued. If this guy was in a Dumbry, we'd be toasty toast. Dead toast. Then he leaned forward to check around the bend. But he's a normal human, I said, stating the obvious. Fascinating how Rio thinks. I was trying to delve into who he really was, to get some consistency with his thinking. Presenting a moral question was a good poke. If you used your super strength, he'd be. What's inside? He shrugged before standing up. Beats me. Another risk, heh. We're on a roll. But we can't stand here waiting to be found, can we? I closed my eyes, as if steeling my resolve, and nodded. Let's go. Rio continued to be a lucky charm. The room we entered was empty. It was a locker room twice as long as my cabin room, with narrow metal cabinets lining either side. Memories of the time Myra hunted me at Sanders Mall returned. I was a weakling, normal human back then, and I stumbled into a locker room too. It was in there I turned into an Adumbry and first transformed into Blanchette. Wasn't that long ago, but insanely plenty of things had changed since. Not really that long yet, the sensation of my stomach getting speared seemed a distant memory. Like I couldn't remember how to properly feel pain. If I suffered that kind of injury now, it'd be painful, but nothing worth noting. I remembered what Rio said, that he missed getting drunk because of his regeneration. Was that wistfulness I sensed inside me? Did I miss being a normal human? I missed the peace, I guess. Rio set overalls man on a bench in the center of the room. Rio threw his head back as he stood, flinging his ponytail. Safe for now, he mumbled as he tried opening the lockers. What do I do next? Rio, you still haven't answered my other question, I said, injecting an edge into my voice. Why did you hit this man? I was about to tell him that we were lost. That's a believable excuse. It's not, he replied. He found an open cabinet and rummaged inside. Are you going to tell me why? Just because I'm just a normal human and useless in this situation. Rio pulled out a uniform, the same as overalls man wore, from the locker. Come on, errand. You're not useless. I am. I sighed, slumping my shoulders. Time to be a drama queen. I know I'm useless. And I shouldn't have been on this trip, you were right about that. But I wanted to help. That's all. Rio's eyes darted to the left. You're, helpful. I hope you won't treat me like extra baggage you cart around, I said. Tell me about your plans so I can help too. Don't forget that I'm a law student at Alois University. There's not much law stuff going on here, but I'm intelligent, like, generally, for what that's worth. I hope I am. More intelligent than me, for sure, said Rio. I couldn't even finish film school. I lied to Myra about why I was kicked out, it was my grades. Though, I did sell. Why did you punch this man? I punched him because he knew we were intruders. Or he suspected, at the least. He was going to call security either way. Rio pulled out a small handheld radio thingy from the pocket overalls guy was reaching for earlier. Rio continued, that elevator, the 0 button wasn't supposed to be there if it was a normal ride. That elevator was placed in the same row as the others to give passengers who are the 2MS customers easy access here. It's such a public place. It should be secure enough that other passengers, the ordinary people, wouldn't accidentally reach this level. Pressing 0 isn't enough to get it to move down here. Shit, is he on to me? Or was he making excuses for himself? If I continued to blame him, he might find that suspicious. I went the other way. I am sorry for blaming you, I said. I might have pressed some wrong buttons too. I mean, they're the correct buttons for the secret code whatever, but they're wrong because we, got here. I'm not blaming you, errand. And, sorry for telling you to shut up. Before I could respond, he hurriedly continued, anyway, I'm saying the code isn't something people would accidentally press. But we pressed it somehow. I slowly nodded. What Rio said made sense. He really was a fast thinker. If given time to think, I would have reached the same conclusion. But in the moment, my reaction was to hide behind a face since we were supposed to be sneaking around. He asked who we are, I said, nodding down at Overall's man. He didn't ask if we were lost or something. You're right, he already assumed we were intruders. That's right, Erendo, my friendo, Rio said, pointing a finger gun at me. And after knocking him out, we could no longer go back up because we can't leave this man behind. If someone came upon him, they'd immediately raise the alarm. Like, they'd check the security footage and see us. Right again. Rio held the overalls from the cabinet to his shoulders, checking if it'd fit him. No evil henchmen are flooding this place. We're good so far. They're not actively monitoring the elevator's laxity, because they've been doing this operation for so long without hitches, is my guess. But if something bad happens, they'll come looking. I nodded. Rio was wrong on this point. Big Marcy's men should be monitoring the secret elevator or elevators if there were others. Such an important location wouldn't be with no eyes. But Big Marcy knew I was coming here, he would have ordered them not to bother with me. By them, I was thinking of only a few of his most trusted men. No way Big Marcy would have told all of his men that he was helping me, the big, bad, Red Hood. His brother, Mark, likely had spies embedded here and there. The security cameras, I was confident were no problem. What I should be careful about were the people on this level. Most probably they'd be under Mark's payroll. Rio was right to punch Overall's man. Looking at the floor, I shifted my feet. Again, I'm sorry, Rio. We're moving way past that, he said. And thank you for protecting me. He blinked. The curve of his ears poking out the sea of his black hair turned red. Yeah. I wasn't doing any protecting. It was my own skin, it's just a random, human dude. No effort at all. Thank me if I actually beat off an Adumbry. Beat off an Adumbry? I giggled. That was a genuine reaction. My humor was degenerating. I should try this joke with Dean. Okay, that came out wrong. Rio shook his head, chuckling. Beat an Adumbry. That. I hope we don't meet any Adumbry, I said. But what do we do with this guy? I pointed at Overall's man. I have an idea. After leaving Overall's man inside the locker room, Rio and I went deeper into the bowels of the ship. Will that work? I asked. We set up Overall's man to look like he bumped his head into the door of a locker somehow and got knocked out. Rio reasoned that Overall's man barely saw us, only for a split second, before getting knocked out. Overall's man wouldn't remember us. If he awoke splayed on the floor, right in front of an opened locker door, he'd assume the most logical thing. It wasn't exactly the most plausible scenario for him. Like, why the hell would he run into the door? But he didn't have any alternative explanation for his state unless he remembered us. I didn't tell Rio about any of my plans, duh. I was surprised that he didn't suggest killing Overall's man. I thought that'd be on the top of his list after that humanity and risk-taking talk. We'll have to hope it works, Rio said. We're not Dario, so we can't just erase his memory. Slightly crumpling the locker door is a nice touch. Awesome suggestion, Erend. Thanks. We make a good team. If it doesn't work and we need to escape, you can ride on a lifeboat and I'll pull it. Wow, that's a nice gesture. I chuckled, all cutesy. I know one thing that's not working: these overalls on me. I gestured at the way oversized uniform I wore. It was the smallest size we could find in that locker room, and it looked like I was a kid lost in a circus tent. No one's going to believe I'm an employee here. Same goes for me, said Rio. Not many Japanese among the crew. Haven't seen one, to be honest. They'd recall if a Japanese guy is working with them. So why are we continuing? I asked. I thought you wanted to go back up. I didn't manipulate him into doing this. He was the one who suggested we disguise ourselves and sneak around. Why the sudden change? Such a weird guy. We're already here. Might as well. And this is our job, remember? I thought you wanted to avoid doing this mission. Well, you thought wrong of me, Ms. Errand Hartwell. He looked over his shoulder and winked. And you'd continue to do this even if I left. It'd be forever on my conscience if anything bad happened to you. That sounded like a sleazy line, and it was, but I sensed some genuineness in it. I couldn't understand why. What was up with this guy? I checked the photos on my phone to see if I could figure out where to go. Are you calling for backup? Rio asked. We probably should tell the others where we are. That's what I was thinking of doing, I replied, angling my phone away from his sight. But there's no signal here. Can't even connect to the ship's Wi-Fi. Just you and me then, Errando, my friendo. Rio stopped walking. I stopped behind him. We came upon a fork. On the wall in front of us were arrows and labels. Left or right? Or should I toss a coin? I recognized the markings on the wall. Let's go right, I said, walking first before Rio could stop me. Right's the right way, right? Right-o, it is, Errando, Rio said with fake enthusiasm. He gulped before leading the way. Rio wasn't a coward, he could say that to himself without shame. His ancestors would agree. Probably. There was a huge difference between being a coward and not wanting to die. That was practically his motto at this point. Same as the next person, he wasn't rushing to exit this mortal plane of painful existence, even if it was shitty. Those raring to jump into a fight against a Dumbry were the crazy ones, like Myra, who always wanted to be at the front and center of every battle. Her bullshit wasn't bravery. It was stupidity. Rio had brains-tempered bravery. He was brave, he could claim. A coward wouldn't toss away his humanity and risk his life for nothing. That made him pause. Was his bravery also stupidity? What had their group accomplished so far? Not much was the depressing answer. The 2MS base getting totaled wasn't their work. Before that, all they had done was be a plug up the 2MS, but nothing they accomplished changed anything at the end of the day. This gung-ho mission of infiltrating this cruise ship was also a foolish errand that'd result in a whole pile of nothing. Or maybe worse than nothing, if they died that had a fat chance of happening. So nothing new. But this time, something was different. Rio didn't think he could hold up his motto. Each step he took required willpower to keep his knees from wobbling. His mouth was dry and his palms were sticky from nervous sweat. He was as stressed as the day he had to tell his parents he got kicked out of college. At that moment, he was a coward who didn't want to die. Its errand, Rio realized. The one time he was alone during a mission, he got stabbed by the parrot mohawk Rofirio. Rio had a ferry out and was caught unawares. Luckily, Rofirio thought Rio was a normal human and decided to toy with him, stabbing him several times. Toy or torture? Both. If Rofirio had decided to chop Rio's head off while he was kneeling like some involuntary seppuku, Rio would just die immediately with no chance to regenerate or fight back. Memories of that time came flooding back now that Rio was again alone. True, he had Errand with him. But what could she do? She couldn't protect him. It was the reverse. He had to protect her. This was worse than if he was alone. Worser, everyone would blame him if anything bad happened to her. This was a loser position if he'd ever seen one, and being a loser for most of his years on this shitty ball of dirt, he'd know. With each passing second, the temptation to execute the sickest ankle-breaker Errand had ever seen, and leave her behind became stronger and stronger. No, I can't leave Errand. Dean would kill him. Though that sounded preferable to everyone blaming him. What if he grabbed Erin and dragged her to the elevator? She wouldn't be able to resist. Okay, that sounded sketchier than an artist's draft. A sound plan. However, Rio pushed onward, further and further away from the elevator. Why? Erin was again the answer. Because of her, Rio couldn't retreat even if he wanted to. What he said about not wanting to leave Erin alone because she'd continue investigating even without him was true. She'd pull something crazy and dangerous like that after he would bring her back up. But the real reason was, and he couldn't believe this was happening, that she inspired him to continue fighting the Adumbri. Rio had mostly lost the will to fight that pushed him to melding with the artificial core, after no results to show for it. Then there was Erin, a normal human, experiencing shitshow after shitshow, getting kidnapped by the 2MS, her condo leveled, her neighbors turned into monsters, and the tech fair she attended also got gatecrashed by Adumbri-making terrorists. Despite all that, Erin was still hanging around. If it were Rio, he'd think some Egyptian mummy curse was on him to have that much bad luck. He didn't know the Japanese equivalent. Malevolent samurai ghost curse or something. Rio looked over his shoulder. Erin followed him on tiptoes, warily looking around their surroundings. Concern glazed her eyes, her lips pressed together, her breathing shallow. She was stressed and scared, but still here. I'm jealous of her, Rio thought. He felt like a burnt-out office working next to a wide-eyed fresh intern. She still had that drive. The drive to fight for what was right. Sounds cheesier than a 4-cheese pizza. Rio lost his drive. Unfortunately, he couldn't return the artificial core stuck to his chest and get his normal human body back. What? Erin asked, meeting his eye. Is something wrong? Well, everything's wrong here, Rio mumbled, facing front again. He fumbled through his pockets. Needed something in his mouth to distract him. He had cigarettes, he was supposed to smoke once he found the employees' pool. Cigarettes weren't what he was looking for. Gum. He forgot to bring any. Are you okay? Erin asked. We're on a cruise with Adumbri. To be more precise, we're in a disguise a third grader can see through while walking through the secret part of this ship. Yeah, I'm okay. No need for that sarcasm, said Erin. I'm seriously asking if you're okay. Like if you're feeling sick or something, because you're walking funny. Walking funny? Rio stopped mid-step. He was so hesitant in his footing that he almost fell forward. I was just pretending to be drunk. Keep your voice down, Erin hissed at him, her brows bumping together. She looked like an angry cat. Let's go here, she pointed down a path to their left. Looks like something's important ahead. Something important? There's nothing. Erin pushed him to the left corridor. Why were you pretending to be drunk anyway? Like I said back at the buffet, I missed being drunk. Rio didn't dare look back at Erin. He didn't trust himself to keep the lie off his face. Is that why you drank lots yesterday? Poor Dean had to pay for all that booze. Oh, come on. Dean said she didn't mind. I do miss being drunk, so I tried really, really hard yesterday. Someone should give me a medal for it. Rio didn't tell Erin the other reason. The real reason. He wanted to get hammered so much he'd pass out and be a sack of potatoes the whole night. He didn't want to stay awake, wallowing in all the scenarios he wasn't getting back to shore alive. And he wanted to prevent nightmares. Though Rio had no way of knowing, he suspected he sleep-talked. Just a hunch. No way he was going to let Everett hear that. Passing out drunk should stop that, right? It seemed his plan partly worked. He didn't pass out from the alcohol, his inhuman constitution wouldn't allow it, but he fell asleep fast enough. Waking up the next day, Everett didn't act weirdly towards him. Either no nightmares or embarrassing ramblings occurred, or Everett was a really good actor. Rio knew Everett was god-awful at acting. Everett couldn't even put a lid on his feelings for Dean, even if he had zero chance. Rio shook his head, snapping out of his reverie. He was walking in a dangerous place while deep in thought. His focus should be where they were going. Where are we going? Errand, he began to say. Maybe we should backtrack and, he froze, holding his arm out to stop Errand too. A murmur of voices reached them. Footsteps echoed. Rio turned around. Errand had a fear-stricken face. Behind her was a straight hallway. Could they reach the corner before the approaching people found them? It was impossible unless they ran. But if they ran, they'd make a lot of noise. They also couldn't stay. There was no way in hell their disguise was going to work. Judging from Erin's expression, she also thought the same thing. Go, go, Rio urgently whispered. Be quiet. The pipes. Midway through the corridor were thick pipes attached to the wall. They ran from the floor to the ceiling. A possible hiding spot. Rio and Errand hurried to the pipes. They then flattened themselves on the wall behind the pipes, Errand on the left side, and Rio on the right. Errand intently stared at Rio. If he had to guess, she was asking him if this was going to work. He was tempted to shrug his shoulders. That was the sort of question he'd ask Dario. However, Rio was the leader in this situation. He wore the most in-charge face he'd ever conceived and nodded at Errand. He couldn't have her panicking and revealing their location. Then he looked down and nodded at his feet, flicking his eyes to hers. Errand got the message and spread her feet open, trying to align their length to the wall. If she had her feet straight, they'd stick out from the cover of the pipes. Both of them were quite thin. The pipes could conceal them. If he was with Dean, her humongous chesticles would give them away. Then again, if Dean were here, they could avoid this situation with her powers. Have you seen the game last night? Said a gruff male voice. The footsteps were getting louder. The man and whoever was with him turned the corner, traversing the corridor Rio and Errand were in. What game are you talking about? It was another guy. Only two of them. The footsteps didn't sound that many. Human or a Dumbry? You know, the game, said the first man. What game? Basketball? Baseball? I follow many sports and don't think there was any significant game last night. No game? The first man's voice cracked. Then he burst out laughing. Oh, that's right. You absolutely had no game trying to hit on Mercy last night. That's a good one, Rio thought, stopping himself from snorting. He filed the awesome line in his memory, planning to use it on Everett. But he might not get the opportunity to do so if he made the wrong choice now. Fight? What other option was there? He had the element of surprise on his side. Attacking first, should he give it all he got? What if they were humans? Would a Dumbry joke around like this? Questions whirled in Rio's head. Part of him just wanted to get found to simplify things. He narrowed his eyes at Errand. Then he nodded. She shook her head at him. Was she telling him not to fight? I wasn't trying to hit on Mercy last night. The second guy's voice was closer. They were about to pass Rio and Errand. Rio clenched his fist. Again, Errand shook her head. She didn't want him attacking the two people. Rio also thought they were humans too. But should he take the risk a second time? Errand pressed her body more against the wall, turning her head sideways. Does she seriously think this is going to work? However, Rio copied her. This isn't going to work, he kept repeating in his head. Adrenaline coursed through his body like an electric shock. He was raring to go. One wrong thing, just one, anything at all, and he'd jump these two bozos. You were, don't deny it, said the first man. You were telling her you got a summer house in Thailand. He walked past Rio and Errand without stopping. From a sidelong glance, Rio saw that the first man didn't look left or right. It's true, you know that. What's wrong with sharing true things? His companion came through next, also looking straight ahead, at the back of the first man. Both of them wore the same uniform as the other guy Rio knocked out. These two idiots didn't notice us. Rio thought the universe was bullshitting them. After the men passed, a wide-eyed and disbelieving Rio looked at Erin. She nudged her head down the corridor. She then shifted to the other side of the pipes and hid herself again from view. Quickly, Rio followed her, doing a twirl across the pipes. Were they in the clear? One of the bozos stopped. The other guy also halted walking. "What's the matter?" someone asked. "I thought I saw." Rio gritted his teeth. With narrowed eyes, he met Erin's stare. She nodded. If they came over to check, he'd snuff out their very dim lights. But Rio still couldn't decide how much force to use. "Saw what?" asked the other employee. I don't know. Must be my imagination, huh?" The footsteps resumed. "I can admit if I'm imagining things, unlike you who imagined he has a shot with mercy." The bozos continued their banter as they walked away, seemingly oblivious to Rio and Erin. Rio took a quick peep and saw the backs of the two disappear around the corner. He held a finger to his lips and shook his head at Erin. They stayed still until they could no longer hear any sounds. "Let's go," Rio whispered. They continued where they were headed before. There was no use going back anyway, with those two there. "I think they were humans," said Erin. "How unlucky we ran into them," said Rio, changing the topic. He knew what Erin was getting at. "We're lucky we got past them with no issues," she replied. "Maybe you're a lucky charm, Rio. If we're talking about luck, those two are lucky I didn't knock them out." Rio was about to say kill them, but he didn't want Erin to think less of him. "And lucky for us too that you didn't have to knock them out." "Like, where are we going to hide them?" "Yeah, you're right," Rio absent-mindedly replied. He was focused on what was ahead. The corridor opened into a wider path that eventually branched into intersections. True, it did look important, whatever was there. Rio didn't know how Erin guessed it, but she was lucky, he supposed. Luck seemed to be the important ingredient of the day. Here came the unlucky part. "Is that a bioscanner?" He pointed at the glowing frame at the end of the corridor. The space inside it shimmered as if a highway on a boiling summer day, the concrete giving off heat. It looked different than the other bioscanners they found on the ship. For humans or a Dumbri? Erin wondered. "No way of knowing," said Rio. "And no way we're going to test that. If only a Dumbri were allowed to pass, both of us couldn't get in anyway. I don't know what'd register. But someone can get in." Rio sighed. Yeah. I guess I'm really doing this. "I can't believe I'm doing this out in the open," Rio moaned. "We're not out in the open," Erin said. "Fine, I concede that it's pretty closed," said Rio, reminding himself to cut back on the whining. They found a small room, barely bigger than a closet, down another hallway. Boxes were stacked against the wall, and there was just enough space for Rio to set himself up while Erin tucked herself between the boxes. Luckily, they didn't run into anyone else while finding a spot for him to do his summoning. "But I still can't believe I'm doing this," he added. A little whine to release pent-up stress. He didn't elaborate to Erin that he made a promise to himself not to summon without a guard. Erin could hardly be considered a guard. She'd feel guilty and useless if he told her that. "You should do it," she urged him. "I'm feeling we're near something important we should learn about." "Or not learn about," Rio grumbled in his head as he settled into a kneeling position. His heart was doing a drum solo. His guts, both the large and small intestines and maybe his stomach counted too, were telling him not to do this in Japanese. His innards were speaking in Japanese, saying this was dangerous and stupid. In Japanese. And he didn't even understand Japanese. "Just a quick scout of the place," said Erin, peering at Rio with a concerned face. He blinked, looking away. She continued in a coaxing tone, "Don't worry, nothing will happen to you. I mean, I know I'm not much use in protecting you, but—" "It's not that," he hastily said. "It was that. Sneak should be able to do it fast enough before anyone comes here," Aaron said. "I promise I won't push it after this. I'll come with you back up. Dean's probably worried about me not responding, anyway. Have to call her soon before she panics. There's no telling what she'd do." Rio stretched his arms. "She really cares about you, huh? I'm jealous." Did he say it too seriously? He chased it with a chuckle. "She cares about your safety too, I'm sure of it," said Aaron. "And I care about you too." That did tug at Rio's heart. "I'm starting," Rio said, before he blushed. Rio Hinode closed his eyes and stretched his arms. His hands brushed the walls of the small room on both sides. Fortunately, there was enough space for his pose. Such a stupid power he got from the artificial core. He chased away memories of dumbass tests he had done until he got how his power worked. Time to be Oberon, the king of fairies. Tilting his chin up, he opened his mouth as he focused on Sneak, his loyal subject specialized in spying. "Think of the little gray man," he told himself. Easier said than done. Extreme focus on a specific fairy was required to summon it, but his mind was filled with worries and fear. The image of Sneak was hazy. Faces of other people kept popping up. The phantom pain of getting stabbed by Rofirio was also there. It was hard to descend into a trance-some Buddhist Zen meditative state, he'd like to think, even though he didn't know much about Buddhism because the possible ways he could die clouded his mind. He suspected he unconsciously tried to get distracted so he couldn't summon Sneak. And what would happen if he didn't? Erin would continue her investigation. The longer they stayed on this level, the bigger the chance of getting found. Found and murked. Best get this over with. Sneak. With one forceful thought, he zeroed in on the gray fairy. He chanted words that he didn't understand. They just came to him. One time, Rio recorded his summoning session and tried to decode the words out of curiosity. Nothing came of it. He didn't pursue it further. His chant wasn't nonsense. Dario had told them that all powers, whether from the cores or Adumbri, had underlying meanings. Rio realized he was better off not knowing what. As Rio intoned bullshit, his whole body became numb. A sensation of falling into a hole followed, the same feeling when dreaming. He jolted when he reached the bottom. He could feel his body again, but could also feel another. An out-of-body experience was the best way to describe it. Something he had felt before when drugs could still affect him. The summoning was successful. He opened his eyes. It was total darkness. No, there was a small light above him. He willed himself to reach it. In reality, he was ordering Sneak to climb out of his body while sharing its senses. But unlike his other summons, he was conscious when Sneak was out. Rio could speak, feel things, and think. He had control of his body, but he couldn't move, change his position, or open his eyes. Else, Sneak would disappear. Rio wasn't sure if he wanted to stay conscious. On one hand, even though Erin couldn't fight, at least she could alert him. On the other, it might be better if he was in a summoning stupor so fear wouldn't grasp his heart. Even if he wasn't in this situation, a downside of summoning Sneak compared to other fairies was always present. Rio could feel Sneak climbing out of his throat while also seeing the inside of his throat at the same time. He tuned this part out. Hello? Erin squeaked. Rio, you can speak when summoning this guy, right? Sneak reporting for duty. Rio looked around the room with Sneak's eyes. Everything was much clearer, like a video on the internet suddenly turned from shitty to the highest resolution. He could pick out minute details, the fibers of the cardboard boxes, almost invisible dust mites on the floor, the individual pores on Erin's face. She had a horrified, maybe disgusted expression, though trying to hide it. An expected reaction to seeing a small humanoid crawl out of her friend's throat. I guess we're friends, Rio thought. Looks like you're fine-ish, said Erin with a grimace. Sorry. Can't help it. I've seen it before, but it's really disturbing. Sorry again. Not my most flattering side, said Rio. He ordered Sneak to look down at his body. Can't get girls with this pathetic pose. Since I'm the only girl around here, said Erin, does that mean you're trying to make an impression on me? She hesitantly laughed. Rio appreciated the attempt to make a joke. He had no intention of hitting on Erin. She was too plain, barely registering a blip on his radar. However, it made him think more about her. She was far from his type, but her grit and drive to do the right thing inspired him and also guilted him. If I was trying to make an impression on you, he said, I wouldn't have tried to back out in the first place. But you're here, said Erin. You didn't abandon me. Nothing to it, said Rio, somehow feeling embarrassed. I'm going now. Can you open the door? Sneak is too weak to do it. Erin nudged it an inch open, and Sneak flew out. Everything clear. I'm going back to that hallway with the bioscanner. Be careful out there. I'm always careful, he said. If something happens to your fairy, you'll also feel it, right? Like, if it dies. I can feel it, Rio curtly cut in. Why did she have to remind him? Now, he was thinking of a Dumbry eating Sneak, like the narrow shave he had at the docks. To change the subject, Rio said, don't do anything funny to my helpless body. You may be tempted, but I'm pure. I can put a mop on your head, said Erin. That got a laugh out of Rio, a real one. And a laugh of relief. Erin was quite the perceptive gal. She knew he was nervous and kept trying to make the situation lighthearted. But part of Rio also didn't want Erin to think he was worried. A machismo bit going on. In the end, it felt nice that Erin cared for him. Don't distract me now, Rio said, turning serious. Sneak's passing by the bioscanners. No one here. Just wait for someone to pass by. I'll park Sneak on the floor, by the corner. I'll have a view of who's coming from any direction and can sneak up on. Erin snorted, sounding like she was stifling a laugh. Rio raised a brow of his closed eye. What is it? You said, Sneak. Get it? Erin said with giggles. That's the name of your fairy. It's like characters in movies mentioning the title of the movie. Rio was tempted to open his eyes and give Erin an incredulous look. What was up with this girl? He didn't know she had this quirky side of her. It was adorable in a way. If this was any other situation, he'd like to just chat with her and hang out. But they have a mission here. Anyway, I'll keep Sneak on the floor, said Rio. If he doesn't move, he's invisible. I remember. No, not invisible. What's happening is that once Sneak stays still, he doesn't register in the consciousness of anyone who sees him. He'll be like the social outcast in high school. Even if somebody bumps him, it'll be fine, so long as his body doesn't move. If he does, then, yeah, he'll get seen. This is why it's best to wait on the floor instead of the ceiling or walls for something to latch onto. No one's going to notice that brief moment he'll leap on a leg. You've really thought up a strategy for this, said Erin. Rio felt his ears heat up from the praise. He wished he didn't tie his hair in a ponytail so his ears were covered. It's not much of a strategy. Just common sense. Now, we wait. I'll keep you safe, I promise. I mean that doesn't mean anything, but I'll do my best keeping this door shut. Yell if something bad happens. Rio appreciated that Erin kept talking to him. That's your part. The moment you sense something wrong, just yell. I'll cancel the summon and take care of whoever it is. As long as he's a human, he added in his head. After a minute of silence, Aaron said, I forgot to say thank you. You already have, Rio said, sighing. Was she trying to chat because she was nervous? Likely. He was too. Once again, I didn't do any protecting. It was just. I meant for saving me from the docks. Have I thanked you for that? Probably. Rio shrugged, arms still outstretched. But you have nothing to thank me for. To set the record straight, that also didn't count as saving. More on the side of finding you after the dust had settled. We didn't stop the monster that was Red Hood. We didn't do anything to the two MS men. Nothing. Rio wasn't one to shy away from taking credit. If he didn't find Aaron when he did, who knew what bad things could have happened to her? True, they didn't do any fighting except Myra, though that wasn't necessary, but they did find her. He found her. But Rio didn't want to take credit. Guilt stopped him. That time, they were tailing Aaron on Dario's orders. They were supposed to kidnap her so Dario could wipe her memory. It was for the group's security. It was the most insane coincidence that Aaron got kidnapped by the two MS, specifically Rofirio and his men, while they were watching her. What choice did they have? They had to go after Aaron and get her because she might spill information about them. I'm thanking you for finding me, Aaron insisted. It was more luck that we found you in the rubble, said Rio. He was tempted to say, I found you. That doesn't count. You talk of movies, think of it like the scene where the police arrive after the climax battle is already over and they have nothing to contribute. The police did arrive. If you didn't find me, they would have taken me into custody and investigated me, especially because the two MS and Red Hood were there. I'll probably get locked up in quarantine and have tests done on me. Fine, you win. On behalf of the group, I accept your thanks and say, you're welcome. Then it was silence again. They waited for several minutes more without anyone showing up. Rio started to think this was all a mistake. He relented to Aaron's plan and used his powers, hoping this would be over soon. It would be neat and quick. Sneak hitches a ride on someone, gets a view of the other side of the bioscanner, and Rio and Aaron rush up to safety. Rio didn't consider it might take time for Sneak's ride to come. This is the exact opposite of quick. Aaron broke the silence. Any SEC minute. Any minute now and someone will pass. She must have noticed him fidgeting in impatience. I caught that, said Rio. You were going to say, any second, but you realized it's not going to happen soon, so you changed it to minute. Every minute that passes, the danger grows. We should abort this mission. No. We're so close. Like, distance-wise. When it comes to time, I don't know when someone will pass. Rio thought of the perfect plan to get out of this situation, set a time limit. They couldn't wait forever, Aaron couldn't argue with that. Another 5 minutes, and if no one showed up, they'd leave. That way, it was up to fate, and it wouldn't seem like he was running away. How about this? If someone doesn't come in, footsteps made Rio pause. Is someone there? Aaron asked. For a moment, he considered lying. But there was no danger. Sneak would be the one doing the infiltration. We have a target, said Rio. Here he comes. Another guy with the same uniform. Here we go. Agent Sneak has successfully attached himself to the target. Finally, said Aaron. I was getting worried there with all the waiting. Sneak needed to get up the leg to get a better view. He let go, zipped upward, and latched on again before the leg swung forward to step. Soon, Sneak grabbed onto the outer side of the man's knee. It'd be too risky to go higher or the man might notice. Sneak clung sideways, facing front, craning his neck up to see as much as possible while holding that position. What else? Where's Sneak now? Rio narrated to Aaron what Sneak saw. The corridor became narrower, and the steel walls were painted dark gray. Dim lights. More cameras. There were doors and side paths, but Sneak's ride continued walking forward. He read the signs to Erend as the man descended the stairs. Containment facilities, muttered Rio. Containing what? Adumbry stuff, I bet, said Erend. We reached a fork. Go right. Same as last time, right's the right way, right? Go right, what? I'm not controlling which way we go. Or do you mean Sneak will fly on his own and oh, the guys picked right? I'm telling you, right is lucky. The man stopped in front of a door. Sneak heard beeping. The man pressed buttons on a keypad. Concerning noises from the other side. Groans and guttural moans. Scratching and banging. I'm thinking we found where they keep monsters on the ship, Rio said. Erend, you may be on to something with your right is right thing. I told you so, she distractedly replied. She lowered her voice to almost a whisper. Something wrong? No. Continue telling me what you see. Rio didn't immediately talk. Were those voices he was also hearing? And footsteps? He wondered for a moment if Sneak heard it or if it was on his side. They seemed distant and muffled, unlike what Sneak could hear. Must be the thick door. Erend would say something if danger was approaching. The door swished open and Rio returned his focus to Sneak. The monstrous sounds turned up, along with mechanical clinks and clanks. The man walked across a bridge over a wide pit, his heavy shoes banging on the metal with each step. Too much noise. But he was sure there was talking there. Somewhere. Coming from below, maybe. Since we're already taking risks, Rio made Sneak look down. For a second, Sneak was visible. And there were a dozen possible witnesses right below them, but none were going to sound the alarm. About 5 feet from the bottom of the metal walkway were the roofs of large transparent crates, each one containing a monster. A mindless monster raving, banging on its cell to escape. Shut up, Erend hissed. Rio wasn't listening. He gagged at the pageant of abominations, his stomach churning. Sneak's vision was too good, even in the dim light. He could see the pus swirling inside the boils covering one monster's face. To head off Erend thinking he was pathetic, he described what he saw to her. Turned out to be a terrible idea because it made him want to puke more when he focused on each monster. There were some sounds that he was sure came from around him. Erend was probably trying to get away from him in case he vomited. Was that the door opening? She seriously wasn't leaving him here, was she? Hey, Erend. I'm not going to puke, he said, making Sneak look forward. He had enough of the monsters. Don't get away from me like I'm the plague. He laughed. Erend didn't reply. That was a lame joke, worthy of Everett. Rio cleared his throat, turning businesslike. If I have to guess what these creatures are, they must be mutants, failed experiments of turning people into Adumbry. Either that, or they're Adumbry that lost control of themselves. Maybe this is part of the process of getting their selves back. Just go all wild and let the ferocity out of their system. Erend still wasn't answering him. He heard more noises, but he wasn't sure of what and where they came from. This was another problem when using Sneak. It was like not knowing whether a ringing doorbell was his own or his neighbor's because all of the apartments had the same ringing sound. This was also how Rofirio got him. Rio thought the sounds of that parrot creep were heard by Sneak. The man that Sneak clung to reached the end of the bridge and entered another door. As soon as the door shut behind him, it became way less noisy. Sneak could still hear the monsters. But Rio could now discern more of the sounds around him. Erend, he said. Are you here? He began to panic. Did something happen to her? Erend, I'm going to open my. Don't, Erend said. Then there was a click. I'm here. Continue the mission. We need to know as much as we can. What was that sound? Did you open the door? I was checking outside if someone heard you shout. I didn't shout, he said. Okay, maybe I did. I would classify it as a yelp. But you shouldn't go out of this room. Wait for me to finish sneak snooping, and then we can both return to the elevator. I think we should move, Erin slowly said. Then she hastily added, don't break your summon. What? Rio almost opened his eyes. When I poked my head outside, I heard some footsteps. People walking not that far from here. You're right, the longer we stay, the riskier it gets. But we also need sneak to find out as much as possible. We should move while you continue investigating. The hell? You expect me to walk on my knees, like doing penitence? This isn't the time to joke, Erin replied. Of course, you're not going to move on your knees. Way too slow. I'll push you while you kneel on this cart I found hidden behind the boxes. Carefully, don't make noise, I whispered as I helped Rio get on the cart while still on his knees and holding out his arms. Not a comfortable task in this cramped space. I didn't know there was a cart in this room, said Rio. I glanced at the two bodies stacked against the closed door. This is super duper, ultimate, Tyrannosaurus Rex dumb. The man crumpled on the floor wearing all black was a guard. The huge sci-fi gun and walkie-talkie thingy strapped to his hip confirmed it. I had given his radio a good squeeze to destroy it. Too many movies warned me about the dangers of radios suddenly buzzing on at inopportune times. He was patrolling the hallway in the last moments of his life. Not just the routine kind of patrol, it was as if he was looking for something. I decided to go out because I heard the door of the next room open and close. And I think this guy also searched the room before that. I didn't know then he was a guard, I just thought someone was looking for a mop. I felt some pushback when I rotated his head to see if he could mimic an owl. Could be an Adumbri. Fortunately, his powers didn't involve being an owl or becoming rubber, so he died when he got internally decapitated. The other guy stacked on top of the guard was an employee wearing overalls. I got the cart from him. He passed by when I was killing the security guard. Wrong place, wrong time. Technically, with me around, everyone on this ship is at the wrong place and wrong time. Same as the guard, I also broke the neck of Overalls Man the second before he could react. No blood. I opened the door. Then I coughed and cleared my throat to disguise the sound of the bodies getting shoved out into the hallway. With enough space, I pushed the cart out, adjusting Rio's position so his arms wouldn't get snagged on the doorway. This isn't a good idea, Erin, he said. Either we stay put or I stop the summon and we ditch this place. I'm not comfortable, I mean it's not good to move around while I'm. You're already on the cart, so let's do this, I said. We're escaping while you continue investigating. Once you're done, we'll already be on the elevator. Trust me. No offense, but I'm not sure about the trusting you part. Are you sure you can push me? I can, I said as I bent down to grab the collars of the guard and Overalls Man the second. Then I pushed the cart with one hand while pulling my corpse baggage with the other. We're moving, see? Wheels are a force multiplier. Simple machines are a grade school science lesson. What's that dragging sound? Rio asked, turning his head around though his eyes were still closed. Is that the wheels or what? The wheels, yeah. You'd think they'd have money for maintenance. Anyway, where's Sneak now? We left the monster pen and I'm not sure where we entered a room with lots of people. Some kind of party going on here. I'm not sure if we should continue talking while walking. Someone might hear us. Just talk in a low voice. Whether you keep silent or talk, or even if you're walking normally, if we run into anyone, they'll be suspicious of us. You said it yourself. I'm interested in what Sneak sees so I'll know if we've got enough. Not only was it for distraction, but the conversation also partially covered whatever weird sounds pulling the two corpses would make. I could carry the bodies on my back, but I didn't want them dirtying me. What if they drooled or blood dripped out of their noses and ears? Worse, what if they voided their nasty insides? I knew from watching true crime documentaries that muscles loosened upon death. The bladder and bowels were muscles, I think. No, thank you to shit and piss on me. Wow, you're the one to decide if our mission is complete, said Rio. Boss girl now, are you? I must say, you being more assertive is kinda hot. Rio. I furiously whispered, rattling the cart's handle a bit. Okay. Sneaks in a room with a lot of shit going on. Two bouncer-type muscle dudes decked in all black by the door. One guy has august arms. The other got horns. The hell? Must be an Adumbry. Both of them probably. I looked over my shoulder to check the dead guard I was pulling. I wasn't imagining that he was a bit hard to kill. More people in that uniform we saw earlier, continued Rio. People in lab gowns. Scientists, I'm guessing. This is where the Adumbry shit is happening. Sneaks ride talking to one of the lab gown dudes. I frowned as I continued to trudge, pushing a kneeling weirdo and dragging two corpses. Was I meant to pass that place to get to the three small ships? Did Big Marcy direct me there? I'd end up killing everyone in that room. That'd ruin my chances of getting to Red Island and could escalate to the entire cruise ship getting sunk. Big Marcy wouldn't want that. Did Sneak pass an intersection after the place with the mutants? I asked, trying to recall the pictures and maps Big Marcy sent me. I think so, yeah. Could you investigate that other way? How am I supposed to do that? This guy is already sitting down, reporting for work or something. He's not going anywhere. I think we've got enough. We should. Why are we stopping? Slight sounds of footsteps ahead. A shadow followed, peeking at the bend. I stopped pushing the cart and laid the corpses on the ground without making a sound. Going to check the path ahead quick to make sure we're safe, I said. Don't break your summon, okay? Before Rio could respond, I stomped onward to meet the next lucky winner of the grand prize of death. The incoming person wouldn't think someone noisily walking was an intruder. He or she wouldn't think much of me and Rio's conversation, if they overheard it. Also, I'd mask any noise they'd make if I messed up offing them. I reached the corner at the same time as Overalls Man the First. His eyes widened when he saw me. Recognition. His hand flew to his jacket to get his radio. I caught his wrist and pulled him down, and then grabbed his throat, crushing his windpipe before he could make a sound. He wasn't dead yet. I went back to Rio, the throat of Overalls Man the First in my grasp. I slowly tightened my grip so there'd be no distinct crack of bone as I snapped his neck. Did he remember us when he woke up? That might explain the guard checking the rooms. So much for Rio's plan. Nothing there, I said. I think we're clear on the way to the elevator. Can I break the summon now? Pretty please, Boss Errand. Denied, I curtly said, thinking I should play along with his kink or whatever. Complete your mission and fully scout the other path. I looked at my increased baggage. I couldn't carry 3 of them by the collar with one hand because they'd crowd each other. Seeing no other choice, put the first Overalls Man on my shoulder please, don't void your bowels, and went back to my earlier setup. And we were on our way again. I took care that I wouldn't step that heavily. Super strength made the weight trivial. It was the cumbersomeness of it that annoyed me. How do you expect Sneak to get to that other place? Rio asked in an exasperated tone. If he flies off, he'll get seen, remember? Hang on, another guy is leaving. I think I can. There we go. Sneak has a new ride. Good work, Rio. Let's hope that guy is going the other path, and not back here. Fingers crossed, Errando, my friendo. I thought I'm your boss. I said, chuckling all cutesy. Dean would elbow me if she heard it. Our path to the elevator is clear. You're not going to lose contact with Sneak, are you? Like, I remember you talking about a certain distance your ferries can fly away from you. We're good, Boss Arando, Rio replied. He explained that the range of Sneak was the longest among all his ferries at 150 meters. Why meters? The Fairy Kingdom signed the meter convention or something? 150 meters or 492 feet. I guess the Fairy Kingdom uses metrics. I read in a brochure that this ship is 3 football fields long. One field is like 360 feet. We're in the forwardmost fifth of the ship's length. Plenty of range for Sneak. Rio sighed. I never thought this was going to happen. You, pushing me. Us talking about football fields. We passed a security camera. I stared intently at it, trying to send a message with my thoughts, you better come since this was your plan. We make a good team, you and I, said Rio. I'm glad we partnered up. I didn't think much of you before, Sneak's new ride turned to that other path. We're going to finally know what's down there. And we're on the elevator. I'm pushing you in now. We're going to finish this mission with a ribbon on top. I pushed Rio into the carriage and carefully deposited the 3 bodies so they wouldn't thump on the floor. I pushed the button for the lobby floor. For a moment, I thought we needed to press some code to make it go up. But it began to move up, causing Rio to celebrate. We made it, he exclaimed. Finish your mission, I sternly told him. There was another security camera here. I looked up and wagged my finger at it. Come on. I know you're watching. Send someone to. I hadn't finished my thought when the elevator stopped, probably just a couple of floors up. The doors opened. Big Marcy and 2 bodyguards, slightly smaller than him, stood outside, blocking the whole exit like a wall of muscles. My eyes widened. I didn't expect him to come personally. I put a finger to my lips. Big Marcy tilted his head. I supposed he was trying to say, I know. Help me out, I asked him with my eyes. I gestured at the dead guys. It was Big Marcy's plan to send me here with maps that bordered a puzzle. He should know there was a chance I'd kill a few people along the way. My hunch was that the bioscanners were set to allow a Dumbry to pass, otherwise, it'd be a dead end for me. Or they could be set to human, and Big Marcy was testing my capabilities. Never know with this guy. Knowing his part, Big Marcy pointed at the corpses. His bodyguards took them out of the elevator as silently as possible. Am I crazy or are we stopping? Rio asked. Why are we? I found the small ships. You're freaking right, Errand. They're hiding here the way to Red Island. Rio had said enough that Big Marcy should know what I was up to here. Big Marcy raised a brow. I nodded. He waved goodbye as the doors were closing. I tapped my wrist, asking for the time the ships would depart. He shrugged. Was he saying he didn't know? Mark probably wouldn't tell him, or the schedule just keeps changing. He twirled his hands, probably telling me more information was to follow, and the doors shut between us. We were moving again. Sorry, Rio. Pressed the wrong button. You can open your eyes now. Mission completed. Woohoo! We're alive. Rio jumped off the cart and hugged me. I flinched and clenched my fists. He let go and backed away. Okay, I didn't mean to do that. That was going to happen someday. I was filing this offense in my memory. I'm sorry, Errand. He looked away, scratching his head. I was just excited we're alive. I turned to face the doors. The next several seconds of the ride was deafening silence. I ordered room service because I wanted to pig out on pastries to wash away the disgusting memories of someone hugging me. It was nearly 2 in the afternoon, and we were outside, having a meeting under the umbrellas near the rails of the ship. We got our food from the bar beside the pool. The lunchtime crowd was clearing out, so there was less chance of getting overheard. Dario chose our spot downwind so the sound of our voices would be dampened. Before, I thought that the wind only affected smell, like the lions in Animal Channel hunting from downwind to hide their scent from getting detected by prey. Turned out, the wind also carried sound. The more you know. Is this okay, Rio? Myra asked. You sending this to us? What if someone searches our phone? What's your suggestion, Chief Spy? Sarcastically retorted Rio. Write on paper using invisible ink? Or do you want to memorize the sketch and then burn it? Something like that, said Mariah. Secrecy and shit. You don't understand, Myra. If someone's checking your phone. I cut in, they're already suspicious of you anyway, so it wouldn't matter hiding it. That was Rio's logic in punching Overalls Man the First. May his overalls rest in peace with the fishes. Rio looked my way. I decided to meet his gaze, and then quickly averted my eyes, playing coy. That should signal I forgave him, which was a lie. His usefulness was running out after delivering the information about the ships to Red Island to the group, and he may soon find himself with Overalls Man the First and the Second. Rio smiled. And with that, we grew closer. In his mind, I'd squeeze out some final use for him, maybe treating him as a meat shield during the inevitable Red Island fight. Our next concern is getting all of us to those ships, Dario said. Even those without powers? Asked Dean, testing how Dario would answer. If they want to, then yes, he said. A good response, passing the choice to us. They can only come along if it's safe. We will formulate a plan that will make it safe for all of us. Taking all his words together, he basically answered yes. He must have trained at the politician school for evasive answering. By wanting me to join them, he confirmed his obvious plans to use me. Otherwise, he'd prefer if I was as far from their mission. But they're just normal humans, said Dean. What can they do to help us over there? We'll put that on the back burner for now. Dario turned to me, definitely sending a message. Take time to think about it while we plan how to get on the ship, he said, knowing full well I aimed to join them. Before that, we have the problem of when the ship is going to leave. It sure as hell won't during the day, said Myra. Yes, it could only depart at night, said Johann, likely after the concert by the pool ends around 10. The window is from that time until sunrise. What are we going to do? Shifts. I volunteer Rio and Aaron to be one shift, Everett said with a snort. He seemed to enjoy partnering with her. What? So you and Dean can go together, snapped Rio. Yes, we'll organize shifts to watch the ship's bow, said Dario. But it's not enough. By the time we see the ship going out, it's already zooming away. We can swim after it, suggested Jubjub. We didn't know if she was joking or not. Is that possible? Dean wondered. Two plans, said Dario. We'll have shifts watching the bow. And we'll have shifts trailing people we're certain are going on those small ships. We have the McHunters and Bianca. Aaron can't meet with Bianca, so how about you go try with the daughter McHunter? Jubjub will pair with you. Since it wasn't nighttime yet, and it was super unlikely that the ships going to Red Island would leave, Dario decided we should all try to find out the possible time and date they depart. I knew the date but not the time, so I was up for it. Tailing possible Red Island goers was the key. For now, the recognizable people we were sure would join the trip were Bianca and the McHunters. If we'd have nothing by the end of the day, we'd do shifts watching for the Red Island ships. I couldn't tell them the schedule wasn't tonight. Tomorrow, Dean and Rio would return to the bowels of the ship for more scouting, something Rio really didn't want to do. Rio volunteered to shadow Bianca. Something about enjoying his time because he might die tomorrow. Weird that he still was a fan of hers. Bianca had some shoots lined up today, announced on her snippet account, so it wasn't hard to find her. Myra and Johann went with Rio. Dario divided the rest of us among the decks to search for the McHunters or other possible leads. We really can't expect the McHunters to buy souvenirs, I told Jubjub and Imani as we walked away from the shops. I was supposed to be with only Jubjub. I liked her codename instead of her real name, Jubilee, because it sounded funny, so I called her that in my head, but I mentioned that having another person would make us look more like a bunch of girls hanging out. Just like the trick I used to get paired with Rio. I wanted Dean to go with me. And as expected, Dario wanted to separate us. He assumed I had a plan and wanted to prevent it. I then suggested, what about Imani? Dario didn't want me to get my way without even knowing my plan and came up with bullshit about why Imani should sit this one out. However, he didn't have any real objection because it was just a trailing mission. No danger whatsoever. Supposedly. I reasoned that Imani would feel better if she moved around a bit. By dragging her with us, I planned to find out if she was a traitor. It'd also lessen Jubjub's apprehension that I'd do something to her if there was another person around. Dean had fortunately the good sense not to jump into the conversation and insist on coming with me. Surprisingly, Imani didn't need any pushing. She agreed to my proposal over Dario's hesitation. What was really up with her? Was I right to bring her along? I'm not sure where we should look for them, said Imani. She had mostly recovered her composure. It'll be too suspicious if we ask around. If it was Bianca or another famous person, it'd be fine. But looking for the dangerously infamous. True, I said. Asking around for the family members of a confirmed Adumbri would raise brows. I guess if we pretended to be wacko Adumbri conspiracy theorists or something. We should have brought Rio along. We can check the bars. No, wait. Imani checked the time on her phone. It's too early to drink. If they're at the pool, the others will let us know. The theaters are next on our list. But if they're in their rooms or somewhere else off limits to regular passengers, we're out of luck. We've been lucky so far, I said, finding this ship's secrets. I'm sure we'll find our next step. This isn't going to be an easy task, droned Jubjub, as if talking about the weather. Dean and Everett didn't encounter any McHunters when they scouted the expensive bars and restaurants earlier. I glanced at Jubjub. She had a neutral face, almost mask-like. She hadn't shown any strong emotion during the short time I'd seen her. As she walked beside me, her eyes were half closed like she was about to fall asleep. Her stark blue irises peeking from behind her lids looked very weird because she had black eyebrows and hair. Either she was wearing contacts or had dyed her hair. Dario wanting Jubjub to go with me was probably a message of sorts. I bet that Rio discovering the secret Adumbri area and ships going to Red Island made Dario even warier of me. Sure, Rio technically found that stuff, but I was also there. At the back of Dario's mind, he must be wondering if it was too much of a coincidence. And he'd be right. But what was Jubjub's part here? They knew I was Red Hood. They should also know Jubjub couldn't stack up to my pinky. Jubjub didn't seem too bright either since she got caught by Finley with flashlights. Comparing the La Esperanza and Las Vegas groups, the latter was far lower in quality. My well-honed people-reading senses, which worked often enough, told me that Dario was the brains here. A morbid thought occurred: could Dario be offering his teammate as bait? If I harmed Jubjub or even killed her, he could use that to turn everyone else against me. But it wouldn't make much sense. Wouldn't he rather use me when we reached the Red Island rather than start drama on this ship? All this thinking was tiring. So much for a relaxing vacation. I enjoyed scheming how to manipulate people, and, yes, that was thinking. But that was the fun sort. Guessing what others' schemes were for me wasn't fun at all. Being on the defensive was tedious. So, we don't have a single lead, I said. Not a very great start to our mission. We'll continue going around and see what's what, said Jubjub. Find other people to tail. We can assume the wealthy-looking passengers are possible leads. We're assuming that every rich person is a monster. I said, chuckling. That's the way the world works, isn't it? Lame joke, but that wasn't the point. I wanted to show these two I was trying to make the situation lighthearted. The same tactic I employed with Rio. No way Jubjub would let her guard down, but she might assume I was trying to be fake friendly with her. Then she'd try to fake reciprocate, thinking I wouldn't know and too complicated. This was why I hated it if the other person was also playing the game. At least, I got a giggle from Imani. You're right, Erend. I was going to say we're talking about real monsters here, but as Mark Twain said, of all the creatures that were made, man is the most detestable. Just allow me to flex my English literature knowledge. I'm jealous you can quote famous people like that, I said, genuinely meaning it. Such a cool thing to do. Could be on the pretentious side, but also the badass side. What's Mark Twain's issue with humanity? According to him, only humans have malice. The Adumbri weren't around during his time, I said, hoping I got it right. I was clueless when it came to poets and writers. But that quote is probably still true today. I'm not sure if the Adumbri are truly malicious like humans. They could just be acting on instincts. Humans on the other hand. Humans also act on instincts, said Jubjub. Instinctually, humans want to do good for themselves. Not necessarily for everyone else. Malice is the intention to do evil. Most people who do bad things don't think they're acting evil. They have reasons other than just being evil for the sake of it, even if the outcome results in harm. Is that part of your explanation of why you killed the survivors of the Greaves Tech Fair? That was what I almost blurted. We already had Imani on our side. Why did she switch back to Jubjub's? Did Jubjub succeed in rationalizing killing the survivors we saved? Protecting their identities, probably. I could see Imani falling for it and forgiving Jubjub. Imani already lost her two friends, comrades in arms, she couldn't afford to abandon her last one. If it were me, I'd also tell Imani that keeping their identities secret would also help their deceased friends' families, shielding them from investigation as they grieve. I get it. Why would Imani believe me, Dean, and Myra, over Jubjub, someone she had known for some time? 3BS black, blonde, and blue versus. I snorted as if holding back laughter, just loud enough to call attention to myself. Jubjub gave me a questioning look. This isn't about the evil humanity thing, I said, stroking my hair. Look, the three of us have black hair. We were also the three Boliviano. All long hair too, said Imani. We could be sisters. But Jubjub has blue eyes, unlike you and me, Imani. I sometimes wear contacts to make them black, said Jubjub. To avoid prying questions. Some people accuse me of dyeing my hair black. I gasped. That's really the natural color of your eyes and hair. I'm sorry, I also assumed. It's fine, Erend. I get that a lot. This color's natural. That's a super rare combination, I said. You know, genetics-wise. Jubjub could be the main character of a young adult, adventure fantasy movie. The audience self-insert lead always had a special physical trait, like red eyes or even purple ones. Black hair and blue eyes should be cool enough. The child part of me was happy to meet someone with this eye-hair color combination, reminding me of the days when I'd be entertained by the exotic beasts on the Animal Channel. Rarer than blonde hair and blue eyes, said Jubjub in the same monotone. I thought she'd get excited about it. Was she annoyed? I hope you're not offended, I said. I thought you dyed your hair black to help your powers. Black helps with the shadows. You always wore black, so. It does help, Jubjub said. If I had light hair, I'd dye it black or dark brown to help with my powers. I also close my eyes when turning into my shadow form to hide my blue irises. Seeing dark helps me concentrate too. Is she bullshitting me? If she didn't know I was an enemy, it'd be easy to say that I successfully enticed her to share crucial information among friends. Given that wasn't the case, she must have been acting friendly towards me and feeding me fake information. Makes me want to transform into Domino and investigate Jub. I did save her when she was cornered by Finley. She should know that was me in my werewolf form attacking that terracotta bastard and giving her an opening. She owed me. Was it possible to whittle some sympathy or gratitude from her? Are the theaters even open during this hour? Imani wondered as we exited the elevator. They play movies in the morning and close after lunch to prepare for the afternoon shows. Here's a schedule. Jub leaned on a standing sign beside the corridor leading to the theaters. 2 shows. She bent down to read it. Not shows. Talks. One is about the world economy during Adumbree turmoil. Such a serious topic for a cruise, murmured Imani. Sounds useful for the rich people here, I whispered. The rich and the Adumbree. I can see why they'll have something like that lined up. The other is about the construction industry, said Jub. A more random topic to have for a cruise. Would any of the McHunters attend either of these talks? Construction. I scrunched my nose. Was Lady Luck blessing me again? The construction talk is given by Spence Hugh, said Jub, glancing at me. Ring any bells? Not really, I said. Says here he's the CEO of HMCI, said Imani. It's a construction firm. Ronan used to do part-time at one of their construction sites before. Her face turned somber as her voice fizzled towards the end of the sentence. Ronan? One of her friends who died. A distraction. What was important was this Spence Hugh guy. I had seen him before. Well, I could barely make out what he looked like when I visited the exclusive bar with Jeffrey in my Domino form. Jeffrey pointed out Spence Hugh talking to Rafaela McHunter to show off that he knew important people. Jeffrey also mentioned that HMCI was interested in developing the lands of the McHunters that were embroiled in legal battles. Let's try this economy in Adumbree talk, said Jub. If the McHunters are going to attend any of these programs, it'll be this one. Do we have to pay? Oh, it's free, said Imani. We should split ourselves, I said. I'll go to the construction talk just to be sure. If the McHunters aren't in either, we can take note of the important people who might be at Adumbree. Imani, which one do you want to attend? Jub placed a hand on Imani's shoulder. She's going with me. Imani just nodded, not meeting my eyes. I smirked as I turned around and headed to the other theater. Jub must feel good for foiling my plan to be alone with Imani. My real intention was to go into the construction talk alone without inviting suspicion, and it succeeded. Playing the game with an active player was tiring. But small victories were sweet. Excuse me, I said to the woman outside the theater. Can I still enter? Yes, ma'am. It's only been 15 minutes since it started. An hour more to go plus an open forum. Please go in. More importantly, the way I intended to get close to the McHunters was better off not witnessed by Jub and Imani. I was going to copy the way Dean and I approached Bianca. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Personally, I wasn't that invested in finding out the Red Island ship's departure time. If Big Marcy wanted me to trash his brother's place, he'd find out and tell me about it. The problem was if he didn't tell me, maybe betraying me, or just knowing about it too late. And if Big Marcy eventually did tell me, how was I going to convey it to the others? I couldn't just say I heard it from somewhere. And so, I had to do this. If only I could swim to the Red Island. The theater was dim except for the stage, with spotlights focused on a well-dressed man talking animatedly on it. The place was slightly bigger than the lecture halls of Cresthorn. Maybe around 300 seats divided into 3 groups. There were around 40-ish people, most sitting in the first few rows of the middle group of chairs, and the rest peppered elsewhere. Jacked men in suits stood near the walls. Guards. I came to the right place. Some people turned to look at me when I entered, including the guards. This was why I hated being late. Didn't like the attention. Worse, I looked very out of place. It was like I entered a corporate meeting wearing a shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. Wait. Not like. This was exactly that situation. Most attendees were middle-aged people, with a few younger ones. I couldn't see old people, the white-haired, white guys expected to be present during stuffy business gatherings. If that wasn't proof these people were Adumbri, most of them, anyway, then I didn't know what was. I craned my neck, looking for anyone recognizable, but my gaze settled on a seemingly familiar guard. Out of all the guards, only he glared at me, trying to make eye contact. I couldn't place where I had seen him before, but if I had to guess, he was probably with Big Marcy during our first meeting. Was he telling me not to start some shit? I wasn't going to. He also wasn't moving to head me off, just staring. Probably didn't want to provoke me. I waved at him while descending the stairs and continued scanning the audience. Jackpot. I spotted Rafaela McHunter in the front row. I should go to the casino and gamble with this much luck on my side. Or not, because such luck was bound to run out. And it might be running out because what was I to do next? I couldn't approach Rafaela. She had people sitting beside her. Why would she entertain a random girl like me? I sidled into the row. Hello. I'm Erend. Yara blinked. Then she looked around. No one else I could have been talking to. Turning back to me, she softly said, hello. I'm Yara. Pleased to meet you. She gave me a little nod, almost a bow. A weird reaction. If I didn't know Yara had only one living sibling, her brother, I would have thought the person I was speaking to was her twin or something. When I inadvertently met Yara as Domino, she glared daggers at me, demanding who I was. Back then, Domino wore the illusion of Yara's deceased sister, probably half-sister, because of their mother. That could be a factor for Yara's nasty reaction. Now, she sounded nice. As I neared, she hesitantly stood up, offering a hand. But I already took a seat beside her. Hand still out, she sat back down, wearing a confused face. Grinning, I shook her hand. Nice to meet you too, Yara. This is the first time we're meeting, isn't it? Yara should be assuming I was someone high up in the 2Ms hierarchy. A random girl walking into a program attended by the 2Ms clients. The guards weren't stopping me or anything. More than likely I was an Adumbri. And an Adumbri on this cruise was someone important, especially with how I strutted about. Confidence does pay off when wearing a disguise, as Rio had said. This wasn't even a disguise. I am an Adumbri. Just not the sort Yara was thinking. My hunch was that Yara wasn't an Adumbri herself. Not yet, anyway. I was using the same playbook as when Dean and I first met. Bianca Dean pretended she wanted a friend her age in the 2Ms organization. That was my idea, so why not recycle it? I was going to play it by ear if this'd work on Yara. Yes, this is the first time, Yara replied. Ms. Erend? It's Erend, I said. Yara McHunter, she said, nodding again. I'm sorry, Ms. Erend. I was flustered at mispronouncing your name, she said, not looking flustered at all. She had composed herself, probably realizing this was a great opportunity to rub shoulders with someone important. Let me apologize for that. I should have listened carefully when you introduced yourself. Many people get my name wrong. Really not surprising. It's not a common name, at least in this part of the world. So is yours. She nodded, a bit too eagerly. When my father heard this name decades ago during one of his business travels in Brazil. He loved it so much that promised himself to name his first daughter Yara. My mother took some convincing, but she eventually gave in. First daughter. Right, Rafaela was the McHunter, not her husband. Yara was from Rafaela's second marriage, assuming there weren't more. Was there even an actual marriage? Why was Yara carrying her mother's surname? In this scenario, under California statutes, it would either mean Rafaela wasn't married to Yara's father and that was a whole can of worms, or Yara had a double surname but omitted using the first one. Could be that the surname of Yara's father didn't command prestige like McHunter. I was proud of myself for remembering some law stuff. That's a cool story, I said, deciding it was tactless to ask about her surname situation. Also, I should already know about her background if I was with the 2MS. Thank you, Ms. Errand. It's a fond memory of my father. Theory time. The McHunters were newcomers into the fold of the 2MS. They could hardly risk getting involved with Adumbrey after Raphael McHunter was executed by the bid. But now, they were following in the illegal footsteps of their lost patriarch because they thought enough time had passed and the heat was off them. Maybe they needed money. More money. Power. The usual stuff. Or the McHunters could have been in the 2MS outer circle and were now trying to join the more exclusive club of monsters after seeing an opportunity. Plenty of vacancies after the bid raided the 2MS base. There were high-profile arrests and investigations after that incident. Probably an understatement to call it an incident, but there was nothing about the McHunters. They might not be important enough to attend the underground arena of Eve the fateful night I was also there. In any case, Yara didn't want to offend me and I found it very entertaining. I was more than half certain she was still human. Her family must be joining the trip to Red Island. Let's see if I can confirm my hunch. Enough about my name, I said. Are you alone? Oh, wait. I see your mother down there. Your brother too, beside her. Why are you sitting away from them? This is just not my thing. No offense to Mr. Hugh. His talk is very boring, I cut in, smiling at her. Who cares about construction? Oops. I guess your family, because of that project you're cooking up. Thank you, Jeffrey, for the assist. You know about it, Ms. Errand? Not much. Just that your family might free up some of your legally entangled lands and Mr. Hugh's company's going to develop them. But that's boring to talk about. It is. Yara frowned. Even if I found it interesting, I have no part in its planning whatsoever. Sometimes, my brother is included in their meetings, but not me. She sighed. You might even know about it more than I do. Something spicy. Why did they exclude you? They think you're too young or what? Not good with financial stuff. Too superficial, or so they say. I'm not even sure what it means. Yara tossed her hair back as she rolled her eyes. They raised me to be this way and now they're complaining about it. If they train me in business, I could be just as good as anyone. But that's how the way things are. I'm relegated to being the spoiled socialite daughter who has no real say in the family. Some of my relatives forget that I exist. I wondered if her parentage had something to do with it. But you're here. You're not as unimportant as you say. I'm assuming you're not just on vacation on this cruise. Yara chewed her tongue while staring at the backrest of the seat in front of her. Several seconds ticked by. I listened to Spence Hugh discuss new construction materials for buildings in areas prone to Adumbrey seedings. Interesting. I wanted to test if I could punch a hole through this hypermodern reinforced concrete stuff. You're right, Ms. Errand, Yara finally said. But you already know I'm not on vacation. See? Your family trusts you if you're their representative, I replied, hoping that I didn't misunderstand what she implied. To be candid, I'm not sure trust is the right word. I don't want to speak ill of my family, but... You don't? I grinned to show she could freely speak. I detected hints of bitterness in her voice. Her resentment was an opening. I'm friendly and lovable. Did I mention cute? Why wouldn't Yara want me to be her confidant, especially in this scary organization? I bet I could make her trust me over anyone else. This wasn't even about finding a way to bring the hero wannabes along to the Red Island. Manipulating people for no reason was fun. Gotta exercise my manipulation muscles. Yara glanced at the front row, a smirk flitting across her face. She could either continue pretending to obediently follow her family's wishes or reveal her true thoughts to me. I gambled that she was assuming that I knew her whole story even though I didn't and would think it was useless to lie. She'd probably rather go with the truth to show sincerity and endear herself to me since I could be a source of favor someday. Yara should have plenty of experience navigating these kinds of social situations, her buttering up efforts were proof. Yara tilted her head and then shrugged. My situation is akin to getting married off to a foreign power for a political alliance. You view yourself as a princess, then? She smiled, but still had somber eyes. I'm not sure if I prefer this to getting hitched to someone I didn't know in a faraway country. If the marriage doesn't work out, there's always divorce. That option's not available here if I change my mind. She let out a hollow, sarcastic laugh. Well, I don't think that's speaking ill at all. I turned to face her as if giving my full attention. Just seeing things how they really are. And your concerns are very much valid. I want to help my family, she said. This is the option available to me. It doesn't sound as grand when I put it that way. But if all goes well, this will have the most impact given our situation. I didn't understand that last part, but Yara's words made me think she wasn't so bad after all. She might be a decent person deep inside, like those rich mean girls in movies who became that way because of family issues and ended up changing at the end, becoming friends with the protagonist they were bullying. Reminds me of Dean. So, how are you feeling about it? I asked. It's for the family, so Not that. I meant what are you feeling about your impending, change? This'd be embarrassing if I got it wrong. I only have a couple of days as a human left, said Yara, her eyes returning to the stage but unfocused. She clenched her hands on the armrests. Jackpot. I was right. She was going to Red Island to get monsterified. There's nervousness, she said, ticking off a finger. What else? Anxiety. Hesitation. Those just go along with each other. Also, actual fear. Did you also feel any of those things, Ms. Errand? Not really, no, I said. I couldn't really feel those emotions, I added inwardly. What you're feeling is normal, especially given the context. But there's a difference between us. I went into this for my own reasons and not for others. I willingly did this. I'm also doing this willingly. I snorted. You know what I meant. External, internal thing. She slowly nodded. Yes, there's a difference between our motivations. Are you regretting? I'm not. Yara briskly answered, suddenly sitting straight, drawing the attention of some guards. Was she worried about giving the impression she didn't want to be in a Dumbry like me? That I might take it as offensive or something? She continued, this is my choice and my choice alone. I could have refused it, but I didn't. No one forced me into this. Stupidly rationalizing with herself. Probably also protecting the image of her family. I bet I could talk her out of this if I wanted to. A fun challenge, but too bad it ran counter to my plans. I understand what you're going through and I stopped, noticing a hulking man enter the row we sat in. It was the guard staring at me earlier. As he approached, I realized he was the idiot at Big Marcy's office who almost attacked me after noticing I had blood on me. If Big Marcy didn't stop him, he would have met the same fate as the guard who did attack me. He also cleaned up after my mess, the dead guard, so he wasn't immediately deleted from my memory for being insignificant. Good afternoon, Miss Hartwell, he said, bowing. Do you need any assistance? It's Wiggins, Miss Hartwell, he replied. You're big, so I remembered you as Biggins. Close enough, surprisingly. I usually suck at remembering people's names. You're Biggins. Biggins, it is then, Miss Hartwell. His jaw muscles tensed. I noticed a vain throb near his temple. From his point of view, talking to me was like defusing a nuclear bomb. He continued, perhaps I could entice you with a relaxing spa or afternoon tea at the Eden Cafe. Boss told me to make sure you get the full experience of what this cruise has to offer. Maybe later. I'm having fun here. I don't imagine this talk is of particular interest to you, he said. Perhaps you and Ms. McHunter can go to. Oh, I'm staying, Yara said. Mother accepted Mr. Hughes' invitation for our family to attend his talk. It'd be rude if I left. Is that so? Then, I'll accompany only Ms. Errand to the. I'm staying too, Biggins, I cut in. That was a good way to try to get me out of here. He likely knew Yara couldn't leave. The cafe offer did sound good. I want to learn more about construction. I only know about the other side destroying stuff. Understanding my thinly veiled threat, Wiggins the Biggins left us alone and returned to his post. A slight distraction, but it gave me street cred. Did I use that term correctly? His intrusion bolstered Yara's image of me as being influential in the organization. Yara said, Ms. Hartwell. Just call me Errand. Ms. Errand, then, she asked. I shrugged. She leaned closer to me and whispered, what should I expect when I reach the Red Island? Thank you for bringing that up, I celebrated in my head. I can't tell you. I know it's a secret and I shouldn't know about it because I'm still not a. I can't tell you because I can't remember. Yara raised a brow. Our memories are wiped before we leave Red Island, I said, recalling Vanessa's explanation of why she couldn't give me any information. An Adumbree station there has the power to do it. That makes sense, said Yara, nodding. I don't know if it's painful or not. The operation or ritual or ceremony or I seriously have no clue what's being done to us there. Probably something medical because they give us pills for our maintenance and do some psychologist stuff with us afterward. I got that information from Vanessa's friends, those idiots who found me in the tunnels beneath the city after I escaped the BIDS nuke. I couldn't remember much of what they said, just that they were speculating on how that Adumbree cocoon thing formed in Eve's arena. Heck, I couldn't even remember any of their names. Vanessa would be sad if I told her that. I've been told that much, said Yara. If it's medical, on an operating table and stuff, they're going to use anesthesia. If it's something super invasive, like major surgery levels, they have to knock us out. If you're worried if it's safe or not, I don't know of anyone dying during the procedure, whatever it actually is. Rumors would easily get around if this or that guy was supposed to, change, and he doesn't come back to his family. The organization can't cover that up. Yara frowned. Maybe they can. I tapped my temple. Think about it. If something went wrong with your operation, your family's going to raise hell if you're returned to them as a pile of mutated flesh, right? I'd rather not think. Let's say you died instead. Same case. They'll return your body or even not and your family will complain. There's no way to hide that. Maybe they can cover up some failures, but not all. I heard nothing whatsoever about people dying during the operation. I'm sure you've asked around too. Yara nodded. All I've heard were success stories. Bottom line, there's nothing to worry about in the safety department. Yara drew a deep breath. Thank you for your assurance, Ms. Errand. I don't think I'll ever get rid of my nerves, but I'm feeling a lot better. I'm glad I met you. You know what will make you feel better? How about you hang out with us tomorrow at Catalina Island? Us? Me and a friend of mine. She's a Leska. I didn't know someone from the Leska family has turned. Oh, she's human. But she knows my secrets. I brought her along for the ride because it's lonely and boring if all I have to talk to are these people. I gestured to the two MS clients sitting in the tiers below us. I'm not on this cruise to go to the Red Island. I just have some meetings here, and it's all vacation for me. That's why I have a friend along. Would you like to come with us? I'll be glad to. I chatted with Yara for a few more minutes before leaving. Biggins the Wiggins approached me again, but I declined all the luxury stuff he offered. I had to find Jubjub and Imani after I cooked up a story about how I managed to connect with Yara McHunter. All in all, Yara wasn't so bad. Someday, she could become an ally, a pawn. Someone I could use even after my planned party at Red Island. I hadn't thought much beyond destroying Red Island and burying the hero wannabes there. That wouldn't be the end of my worries. It was going to be the start of more troubles. Before, this prospect would have annoyed me. But now, it sounded fun. Maybe I want the world to bother me, I muttered. Pardon, ma'am, said the woman outside the theater that Imani and Jubjub entered. Oh, I was just talking to myself, I said as I entered the door. Wow, there are so many yachts, I said while taming my long hair whipped into a frenzy by the sea breeze. It was the next day, and the tender ship that fetched us from the cruise ship made its way to the shores of Catalina Island, bouncing gently over the waves. The other passengers and I gazed at the waters accented with lots of parked boats mostly organized into rows. I think I spotted a couple of dolphins. There were also some people on jet skis. I hadn't been to this island before, but I knew what to expect. I researched about it yesterday when a complicated and probably stupid plan occurred to me while I was with Jubjub and Imani. Catalina Island was going to be the place for a gamble, mind games, and taking the initiative. A true vacation. Given that I've started planning for after Red Island, trying to befriend Yara and stuff, it occurred to me that I should have planned for what to do there. I got nothing beyond killing everyone and destroying everything. No specifics. I should prepare some ingredients. Mise en place, as they say in fancy restaurant talk. The waters around Catalina Island were super clean and blue. Going inland, sandy beaches turned into concrete, bricks, and wood, the beautiful buildings looking right out of a postcard. As a backdrop to the community by the beach, mountains rose, ringed with tiers carrying more buildings. Lots of fancy houses. Could be considered mansions, probably. I read that the cost of living here was far from cheap. Above the buildings on the mountainside was all earth and patchy grass accented by shrubs and trees. Not much shade. Interesting that the island wasn't foresty like those in the Pacific. It looked more like the desert grasslands of California turned into rolling hills and mountains. I didn't like that very much, but it suited my plans. The beaches looked nice though. Do you have a yacht? I asked Dean. She shook her head. Why would I have a yacht? Those are for sailing and, hosting parties. Mostly the second one. I don't do the former and barely any of the latter. I don't think I've hosted a party since I started law school. Oops, wrong question. Does your family own yachts, with an S? I don't know how many. Like, we have 2 or 3 docked at the La Esperanza Yacht Club. My sister stays at one of them sometimes. I rolled my eyes. Dean said it in such a matter-of-factly way that it wasn't even bragging. And I expected as much. You don't even know how many of your family's yachts are there in La Esperanza. I don't go to the yacht club, Dean said, shrugging. I might run into my sister doing some business with her boyfriend or boyfriends, with an S. The number of yachts that your family owns and the number of boyfriends your sister has, the last 2 unsolved math problems of our day. We reached a pier that extended from the island like a ship's bulbous bow, or the male organ Rio liked to compare it to. A gangplank was lowered. Wow, I know boat terms, and we got out of our ship. It was only Dean and I with this batch of passengers because our rooms were much more expensive, so we got to leave first. The rest of the hero wannabes, the peasants, will come with the next tender ships. There wasn't an actual class system for going to Catalina, it was just by decks. It so happens that some decks have more expensive rooms than others. The really VIP people had separate ships taking them to the island. Reminds me of the Titanic, where the first-class people had dibs on the lifeboats. Dunno if that was what truly happened or if the movie took liberties. From the pier, we strolled along the promenade going to the heart of the small town of Avalon, cool-ass name. Birds chirped and dozens of boats lolled gently on the waters to our right. Besides passengers from the cruise ship, there were also people coming on ships from Long Island. This was a very touristy place. Why do rich people love yachts so much? I asked Dean. Are they like diamond rings which were artificially pushed to? I don't know, said Dean. I'll buy you a yacht if you want to test it out, but for now, are you sure about contacting Yara? We've been over this already. No danger here, especially with you along with me. We're going to join Yara for lunch, maybe a tour around the town. Be best friends. She's going to that place we want to go to, and we need the schedule of their departure. This is just a modified, Bianca plan. I'm the Adumbri, which I really am. Shush on that, Dean hissed, pinching my arm. And you're the sidekick, I said, giggling. For once. Just a joke, of course. I don't think you're legally allowed to be a sidekick. Maybe if we're in Mexico, because of like international laws and... You're not taking this seriously, Erend. You're being reckless here. Reckless? I don't think so. I wriggled my nose at the salty air. Dean was being a helicopter parent again. I thought all this shit through. And more. You're so relaxed despite the danger. Like, you have no hesitation at all putting yourself in these situations. Here we go. What are you talking about? Dean lowered her voice as a couple of tourists pulling large luggage bags passed us on their way to the pier. Erend, I dare you to deny you didn't have anything to do with Rio finding out where the ships going to the Red Island were hidden. I had something to do with it because I was there when. She grabbed my arm like I was a misbehaving child. I was so thin that her hand fully encircled my arm like a manacle. You know what I'm talking about, she furiously whispered. Did you investigate on your own beforehand so you knew to lead Rio there? No, I said in a tone that made it obvious I was lying. Dean narrowed her eyes. I matched her gaze. I didn't bother denying it because it was obvious anyway. This thing with Yara was also suspicious. Dean and Dario were definitely thinking about the same thing, I set it up in some way. Dean broke off our staring contest and looked left. I knew she was pissed that I kept secrets from her. This must be why she was a grouch the entire evening yesterday. But I had to do this. I couldn't stay timid, not only to bring the hero wannabes along for the Red Island ride but also my facial development. I'd find a better term next time. Like the protagonist following the 3-act structure, my face was transforming from meek Erend to somewhat assertive, confident, and active. That last part was important. We were past the midpoint of the movie. There was no turning back here. The main character, yours truly, was going on the assault after being only reactive in the first part of the movie. I couldn't continue with my background character face as to Dean and Myra and Johan, to some extent because of my growing powers and the experiences I've been through that she knew about. Character development was required. This was going to be difficult to keep track of my faces presented to many people. We walked past a playground with slides and swings, and then a basketball court. The guys playing hoops stopped for a moment to look at Dean, who was still sulking. Dean ignored their attention and looked forward. What did she expect to happen by giving me the silent treatment? I wasn't like a boyfriend who'd come to her on bended knees begging for forgiveness. Dean, I had a plan, I said, following her as she veered away from the waterfront, taking the left path at the fork. We walked down a road parallel to the promenade. That's not being reckless. And it turned out to be a success. We found the way to Red Island. I expected her to pry about what exactly happened. I was preparing a fake story, but it turned out that wasn't her issue. I know you don't need me, she said, dramatically turning to me. So that's what this was about. I linked our arms together despite my disgust of human touch. A slight sacrifice for my friend. My pawn. Dean, don't be like that, I softly said. That's why I keep on trying to get us paired. I'm going to face a lot of dangers. I can't avoid them. Time to face them head on. And I can't do it without you by my side. Bile was rising, a vomit threatened. If the earth opened up and sucked me straight to hell for such a cheesy line, I couldn't complain. But it made Dean feel better. She smiled as she said. I'll be there for you. You may be stronger than me now, but I can do things you can't. Like, become a model. She lightly squeezed my arm. Seeing the future. Yeah, I can't do that. Errand. Do you feel yourself changing? I'm not talking in a physical sense. Mentally. I blinked. I am changing. For one, I was having fun as a not-so-human anymore. But I knew that Dean was talking about something else. I know, Dean. Thanks for the advice. Getting lectured was annoying. I wanted to call her Mom and turn the situation into a joke, but I wasn't going to poke fun at her when she was this serious. I supposed I should appreciate her concern. What about you then? I asked as I tried to disentangle my arm from hers. She wouldn't let me. I gave up. Shouldn't you feel safer and confident because of your future-seeing pet? She sighed. I feel more paranoid. I can see that happening. Though, is it really paranoia if this or that dangerous thing was set to happen if you didn't avoid it? I guess not. Still very stressful. Sometimes it's better not to have spoilers. I patted her arm. As your best friend, I promise to not contribute to your stress. Let's focus on this mission, okay? I'll listen to your warnings, I promise. Dario didn't stop us pairing up this time, said Dean. Should we be worried about that? That's 'cause he didn't have a legit reason to oppose it, I replied. You're the perfect security blanket for me. I'm not a blanket. Unless you let me hug you. No way. It's too hot for a hug. I squinted at the sun. No clouds. Perfect for my plan. Maybe we can buy an umbrella or those beach hats with wide brims. Or a flashlight, I added in my head. We can do some shopping before hang on. Dean let go of me so she could get her phone from her purse sandwiched between us. Someone's calling. It's Myra. I stared at the stores selling touristy stuff while Dean talked to Myra, wondering where I could get a flashlight. This town should have a hardware store. Maybe I should buy a hat too. A portable shade would be a good addition to my ingredients. I could tell from snippets of Dean's conversation that it was about Dario. While she was occupied on the phone, I took the lead and made a turn back to the shore. We came to a short strip of the beach that was full of people. There was a funny-looking seal statue. Were there seals around these parts? Jub is probably on her way, said Dean after the call ended. Myra saw Jub and Imani head to the lower deck to board the tender ship. Myra couldn't risk checking the departing passengers without Jub seeing her, so she just waited after the ship left. Only Imani was left there. That's as good a confirmation as any. Jub could have turned into her shadow form to board the ship, so watching that wouldn't matter. Your suspicion is right. I nonchalantly shrugged. It just makes sense. No way Jub staying on board to investigate the bow like she was assigned during our meeting. I'm sure of that. What about Everett? Did he leave on that ship with Jub? Or anyone else? No. The rest of our group is coming on the next tender ships. I see. Dario's going to ask about our location later. He'll say it's for Everett to find us, I mean, that too, but it'll really be for Jubjub. During our team meeting yesterday evening, Dario agreed that Dean should go with me. Even if Imani betrayed us, Dario still had to play to Rio and Everett. And maybe Johan, not sure if Dario was aware Johan was with us. I was a normal human in their eyes and Dean was the perfect protection. The Bianca mission was precedent. Everett was assigned to shadow us as a backup if things got hairy. Rio was teasing Everett about wanting to see Dean in a bikini on the beach, and Dario pounced on it, laughing as he joined in on the joke. That rang alarm bells. Dario barely jokes. The more serious the situation, the fewer jokes. I couldn't recall him joking or even laughing during this cruise. Jubjub was the logical choice for a tailing mission, but Dario didn't send her. Why? Dario reasoned that Jubjub's assignment was infiltrating the bulbous bow of the ship, staking out the special elevator until it went down to the secret level. Technically, a good idea. But Jubjub could have done it that same night and tailed us now. Dario added that he was staying on the ship today too, just in case Jubjub needed backup. That clinched my suspicion. Dickhead Dario wanted to fool us into thinking that he and Jubjub were staying on the ship today. He assumed I'd feel safe enough to do some shenanigans on Catalina while Jubjub spied on me. He's not wrong. Still a couple of hours until we meet Yara, said Dean. She stretched her shirt out to show me the straps of her bikini top beneath it. You promised me we'll get a tan. What dash? Really? Did Domino promise her that? But I'm not wearing a swimsuit. Dean cupped a hand around her right ear. Hear that? Hear what? That's the alarm for shopping time. I stared at the sign above the counter that said, Gus's Steakhouse and Seafood. I really don't like an apostrophe and an S after an S. Just feels wrong. Is that even grammatically? Hey, what are you doing? Dean held my arm as she examined it. She gingerly scratched my skin. I don't think you got even 1% tanned. We should have stayed under the sun a little longer. I already kept my promise, I said, taking my arm back. While Dean was distracted picking a swimsuit for me, I went to the next store to find a flashlight, mumbling that I was looking for a beach hat. I managed to find a keychain flashlight. Small enough to hide, I just hoped it was strong enough to be useful. I also bought a magnifying glass, a keychain one too. Not sure if this would help. We rented a golf cart for some reason, there were barely any cars on the island and drove to the foot of a random hill. Some hiking later, we reached an outcropping ringed by bushes. I was ready with my excuse of not having sunscreen, but Dean pulled out a bottle from her purse. I took it from her before she could offer to apply it to me. The sunbathing part wasn't so bad. I used the time to go over my plans while Dean listened to music. I got a bit of shade, said Dean, this time checking her arm. But you didn't. We already stayed there for 20 minutes, I said. Maybe my regeneration has something to do with it. I think so. That just means we have to do it again. You're not going to turn me into a sun-dried tomato. That was enough. Oh, look. He's here. I nudged my head to the beach. We were seated by a balcony, shaded by a thatched roof. Down below, standing next to a fruit shake stand was Everett. We told Dario we were at the meeting place a few minutes ago. That should mean Jubjub was around here too. I told Dean that we should talk about my inhumanness so Jubjub wouldn't suspect anything. And here's Yara. Dean pointed at the stairs as a platinum blonde head popped up. I looked at the clock on the wall. Right on time. I thought she was going to be late. Bet she was scared to offend me. You and your crazy plans, Dean said, shaking her head. We'll have to talk about. Later. It's time to do a Bianca 2.0.